Bob Dylan, the voice of a generation, the first great influencer. But what do we really know about the man? Books, documentaries, poetry slams have all tried to make sense of the Bob Dylan enigma, but he remains just as elusive today as Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Two characters his voice has been compared to. Perhaps the problem is that researchers rely too much on the facts to reach their conclusions. This will not be an issue for us as we try explaining Bob Dylan. According to legends and easily falsified birth records, Bob Dylan was born in 1941 here in the surprisingly well-groomed primitive wilderness of Duluth, Minnesota. It was there he learned all the skills a boy in Minnesota needed: cow tipping, log rolling, even yodeling. According to his autobiography, there's nothing he enjoyed more than swimming in the river, climbing the hills with his friends, or dreaming of escape on the majestic steamboats that docked in town. But there's a problem with that story. It's not Bob Dylan's. It's actually Mark Twain's. And what are we to make of the fact he speaks with no discernible Minnesota accent, or that his odd speech pattern doesn't have the rhythm and cadence of a true Minnesotan? And why is he the only person from Minnesota who speaks in metaphors? The truth is, Bob Dylan isn't from Minnesota. His story begins 1,407 miles away in Roswell, New Mexico, where in 1947 an unidentified flying object crashed in the nearby desert. The Air Force quickly retrieved the wreckage and whisked it away to Area 51. Since that time, they have consistently denied the existence of any unidentified remains, despite an avalanche of circumstantial evidence from people with too many pets and a lucrative career making hats out of tinfoil. The real reason the Air Force didn't want to admit anything was they didn't want to alarm the public. They didn't want to admit there was a survivor, and that survivor was on the loose. That survivor was Bob Dylan. The evidence, we believe, is compelling. Bob Dylan has claimed that his real name is Zimmerman and he is Jewish. That's an odd thing to declare, really. But could it be because he suffered an injury in the crash, possibly a spontaneous circumcision? And by claiming he was Jewish, he wouldn't have to explain why he didn't have a foreskin. But there's more that suggests there's something questionable about his Jewishness. Irving Berlin, Jewish, wrote White Christmas. Mel Torme, also Jewish, wrote The Christmas Song. Johnny Marks, that's right, also Jewish, wrote Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. But Bob Dylan, supposedly Jewish, Bob Dylan has never written a Christmas song. We're not making this up, people. The evidence speaks for itself. Dylan made his debut at Gerd's Folk Club in New York City, a tiny basement club in Greenwich Village. According to the 24,000 people who claim they were there that night, one of the performers handed Dylan his guitar while he went to the washroom. Mistaken for the next act, he was pushed on stage and in the pandemonium strummed the guitar trying to get somebody's attention while insisting he wasn't a performer. All in that curious voice of his. In the chaos, they thought he was singing Blowing in the Wind, and suddenly, unexpectedly, Dylan was a hit. He released the Bob Dylan album, followed by the Freewheelin' Bob Dylan and The Times They Are A-Changing. Everybody, it seemed, wanted Dylan's songs. His label was convinced that they could release anything by Dylan and it would sell. But his fourth album, a collection of Bob Dylan mic checks called Check Check 1 2 1 2, was a dismal failure. The single, Jerry, Can You Pull a High End Out, didn't even chart. It was quickly withdrawn from sales. Today, a pristine copy of Check Check 1 2 1 2 sells for the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's little compensation for the record executives who released it in 1965 and overdosed in the 70s. His most controversial event was his appearance in 1965 at the Newport Folk Festival with an electric guitar. He later went on to have a torrid affair with it until they split acrimoniously over whether to raise the children as Fender or Gibson. This was interpreted as a repudiation of the folk movement. In reality, his primitive grasp of the instrument was an attempt to use an amplifier to communicate with his home world. It was unsuccessful. Or was it? Here's where the strange case of Bob Dylan gets even stranger. In 1983, Norm Macdonald joined Saturday Night Live. A Canadian from the Ottawa Valley, he didn't sound anything like anybody in the Ottawa Valley. Like Dylan, he can't sing, and his speech patterns, rhythm and cadences all match Dylan's, suggesting they might be from the same planet. Are they? We can't say for sure. One way of doing it would be to compare their penises and see if there is evidence of spontaneous circumcision. To date, though, no one has seen their penises side by side, so we can't say for sure. We tried reaching out, but we couldn't get anything. We invited both Bob and Norm to come here and discuss the strange similarity, but they both declined our offer. That means I am going to have to demonstrate that similarity to you, despite the fact I am not a professional musician, nor am I a particularly talented mimic. These limitations have never stopped me in the past, and we have no reason to think that's going to happen this time. 1, 2, 3, 4.
How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man?
How many roads must a man walk down? I don't know, because like most people, I live in the city. Do streets and boulevards count? I mean, out in the country, you can walk for miles before you hit another road. In the city, I'm pretty sure what all it would take is about a week.
How many seas must the white dove sail before she can sleep in the sand?
Okay, first thing, doves don't sail, they fly. Did you not know that? And doves don't sleep in the sand either. If they did, people walking along the beach would be going, oh, geez, stepped in another dove. Not very romantic if you're going to spend your time taking a walk a few feet and then having to scrape dove off the bottom of your foot. Nobody wants to do that. No. Even seagulls don't sleep in the sand. No. They're up in the parking lot fighting over a french fry. Getting run over by pickup trucks the way God intended.
And how many times will the cannonballs fly before they are forever banned?
I can't help but think having a cannonball fly was an attempt to redress the problem of making a dove learn to sail. And I just don't get what the big deal with cannonballs are. When was the last time they were used? The War of 1812? I don't think anybody's tried to develop the smart cannonball. No. And I can't help but notice there's no mentions of cannons with the cannonballs. Apparently one day they just developed the ability to fly. And you think birds were a problem with your car. Wait till you get shrapnel.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind.
Well, I can't argue with that, 'cause this song really blows. Yeah. Bob Dylan, Norm Macdonald. Clearly, neither is from this planet. This is Jimmy England. I'll see you next time on Explaining.